So you've likely seen the news reports, the conflict in Ukraine. It just keeps grinding on. But a big headline recently wasn't, about the front lines exactly.
No, it was this huge Ukrainian drone attack.
Yeah, absolutely massive, hitting Russian air bases thousands of miles behind those lines. It's kind of staggering.
It really was a truly significant operation.
Yeah.
And it really underscores this whole David versus Goliath thing we've seen, hasn't it?
Totally.
You've got Ukraine, obviously the smaller nation, finding these incredibly inventive ways to strike deep, executing these really daring missions against a much larger force.
That's the core theme, isn't it? And it's why the sources you shared are so interesting, especially that CNN piece.
Right.
It goes beyond just that one recent attack and kind of dives into some of the most, impactful examples of this asymmetric stuff Ukraine's doing. So our mission in this deep dive is really to unpack that source material, pull out the key details, and try to understand what this pattern of attacks tells us about the conflict right now.
Exactly. And the source makes a point right up front about that latest drone operation.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a spur-of-the-moment thing at all.
No.
No, this particular attack, the one hitting those air bases, over a year and a half in the planning and execution.
Wow.
That level of foresight for just one operation, pretty remarkable.
A year and a half. Okay, that puts the scale into perspective straight away. Let's dig into the details of that recent attack first, then.
True.
The article calls it potentially the most significant strike Kyiv has launched since the war began. What are the sort of headline figures the source gives us?
Well, according to an SBU source cited in the article, over 40 aircraft were reportedly hit.
40?
Yeah. And the targets were specific, very high value, 295 and 222 M3 strategic bombers, plus one of Russia's relatively few remaining A-50 surveillance planes.
Okay, hitting strategic bombers like the 222 M3 and the 295, why is that particularly, impactful?
Well, the 222 M3, Russia uses that for long-range standoff attacks, launching missiles from safe airspace far from the front lines.
Yeah.
And the 295, it's an older design, right, back to the 1950s.
Yeah, a classic Cold War plane.
But it's been modernized. It can also launch cruise missiles. The source mentions that at the start of the year, Russia had around 55 222 M3s, and maybe 57 295s. That's according to Military Balance 2025.
Okay.
So damaging or destroying a decent number of these, it really cuts into Russia's capacity for those kinds of long-distance strikes.
And the method described in the source, how Ukraine supposedly got the drones so close, it sounds almost like something out of a movie smuggled into Russia.
That's the claim, yeah, from an SBU source in the article. They talk about drones hidden inside these wooden mobile houses.
Wooden houses.
Placed on trucks, apparently smuggled across the border, positioned near the bases before they launched. It definitely highlights the operational ingenuity if it's accurate.
If that account is accurate, the sheer audacity is just staggering. And the claimed impact figures from the SBU are huge too, right? Something like $7 billion in estimated damages.
Yes, that's the figure their source gave. They also claimed the attack hit 34% of Russia's strategic cruise missile carriers stationed at these main air bases.
Wow.
But these are figures presented by Ukrainian sources in the article, we should note.
Of course, yeah. Attribution is always tricky. So, beyond the immediate physical damage, what strategic implications does the source draw from this attack?
Well, one key point the source makes is that this shows Ukraine can still apply pressure on Russia. Significant pressure.
Even while Russia's ramping up its own offensives elsewhere.
Exactly. And the article quotes a military aviation expert, Peter Layton. He suggests that losing these heavy bombers might mean Russia has to lean more heavily on drones themselves for future long-range stuff.
Interesting. An eye for an eye, drone for a drone, almost.
Sort of, yeah. And military analyst Carl Schuster makes a really fascinating point about the political fallout for Putin.
Oh, what's that?
He sees it as a major political distraction. Schuster thinks Putin will probably have to divert more resources towards internal security after what he called a domestic security failure.
A failure, yeah, that makes sense.
His quote in the article is particularly sharp. He says, Ukraine was able to deploy dozens of containers with drones to within line of sight of major Russian strategic bases and launch massive airstrikes. Can you imagine explaining that one to Putin?
Oof. Yeah, that really captures it.
It perfectly captures the challenge this poses for Russia's leadership, right? How could this happen so deep inside their own territory?
It's not just the physical damage, is it? It's the embarrassment, the questions it raises about their internal security.
Precisely.
Okay, so that recent airbase attack is a stunning example. But the source makes clear this pattern of, innovative asymmetrical attacks isn't new.
Not at all.
It takes us back to one of the earliest, maybe most symbolic hits of the war. The sinking of the Moskva cruiser.
Ah, yes, the Moskva. That was huge. Happened relatively early, too, about 50 days into the conflict.
The flagship, wasn't it?
It's the flagship, yeah. Pride of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, one of their most important warships. Losing it was just an enormous blow, militarily and symbolically.
And how did Ukraine claim it happened? What does the source say?
Ukraine's Operational Command South, back in April 2022, claimed it sank after being hit by their own Neptune anti-ship missiles.
Okay, Neptune missiles. And Russia's story.
Russia offered a different explanation. They claimed a fire broke out on board which caused munitions to explode, damaging the ship and forcing the crew to evacuate.
So, different causes claimed.
Right, the accounts differ on the cause, but the outcome was the same. The ship was lost, gone.
And the impact of losing such a major vessel, the source emphasizes that.
Oh, massively. Analysts quoted in the article compared its loss to, like, the U.S. Navy losing a battleship in World War II.
Wow.
Or maybe an aircraft carrier today. It really struck hard at the heart of the Russian Navy, and it was a major hit to national pride.
And the article notes this kind of kicked off more problems for the Black Sea Fleet.
Yeah, it seemed to usher in a whole string of naval defeats for Moscow in the Black Sea after that.
Right. Speaking of naval actions, the article mentions another, more recent ship hit, using very different tech this time.
Yes, the Ivanovets. That was a guided missile ship, hit in early 2024. This one was reportedly attacked and sunk by 6 sea drones.
Sea drones.
Right.
And get this, the source points out, they were powered by jet skis.
Jet skis. Seriously.
Seriously. The article describes nighttime footage released by the Ukrainians. It apparently shows Russian forces firing, like, desperately at these approaching drones before at least 2 struck the ship's side, disabled it, caused massive explosions.
Incredible. Using jet skis as weapons platforms against a warship.
It's another really vivid example, isn't it? Using relatively low-cost, almost off-the-shelf technology as the basis for innovative weapons against traditional, very expensive military hardware.
Definitely. Then there's the Kerch Bridge. That feels different. Less purely military, more like a piece of national identity for Russia. Absolutely. The Kerch Bridge is incredibly significant.
Yeah.
Huge structure, 12 miles long.
Built after the 2014 annexation of Crimea, right?
Exactly. Costs around, what, $3.7 billion? The source describes it as a real personal project for Putin, designed to physically and symbolically bind Crimea to Russia.
And beyond the symbolism.
It's a critical artery, essential for supplying Crimea, both for civilian daily needs and, crucially, for military logistics supporting the war effort.
Vital. And Ukraine claimed responsibility for damaging it. That was July 2023.
That's right. Ukrainian security services claimed they used an experimental sea drone for that one.
Another sea drone.
Yeah. The head of the SBU, Vasyl Malyuk, is quoted describing it as a joint operation with the Ukrainian Navy.
And the impact.
It caused damage to the road lanes. Russian officials also reported, sadly, that 2 civilians were killed in that attack.
So a very public strike against critical infrastructure and a powerful symbol of Russian control. Finally, the article touches on something, well, darker, maybe more mysterious. This pattern of high-profile deaths inside Russia itself.
Yes, the mysterious assassinations, as the source labels them.
Ukraine hasn't claimed responsibility for these, right?
No, Ukraine has never claimed responsibility. But the source notes a distinct pattern. Over the past year, a number of significant Russian military figures have been killed inside Russia.
And many had links to the war.
Yes, many played important roles related to Moscow's war effort in Ukraine.
Can you walk us through a couple of the specific examples the article mentions?
Sure. So just last month, Tsar Alexandrovich Gurtsev, he was killed in an explosion in southern Russia.
Okay, who was he?
A deputy mayor, but also a prominent veteran, apparently involved in the Russian attacks on Mariupol.
Ah, Mariupol. Devastating.
Yeah, where the UN estimates something like 90% of residential buildings were destroyed. The source specifically notes Gurtsev had introduced his developments in the technology of targeting missiles.
So a technical role, maybe?
Suggests that, yeah. Possibly linked to this Time of Heroes program Russia has for veterans. Russian authorities are investigating his death, including looking at the possibility of a terrorist attack involving Ukraine.
Huh. And there is another high-ranking officer mentioned.
Yes, General Yaroslav Moskalik,
Hmm.
deputy head of the main operations directorate of the General Staff.
Pretty senior.
Very. He was killed in a car explosion back in April. And in connection with his death, Russian authorities reportedly charged a Ukrainian special services agent with terrorism.
Okay.
The article also mentions Armen Sarkisian, described as the founder of a pro-Russian militia group in eastern Ukraine. Kyiv authorities apparently labeled him a criminal mastermind.
Right.
He died following a bombing in central Moscow in February. Took place in an upmarket residential complex, according to TMAP.
So, okay, while Ukraine isn't taking credit, the source is presenting these cases.
Exactly.
Highlighting that individuals with significant links to the war effort are being targeted inside Russia, and Russian authorities themselves are linking at least some back to Ukrainian involvement?
Well, precisely. The article simply reports these events, citing the info available, including the claims by Russian authorities, and descriptions from Ukrainian sources, like calling Sarkisian a criminal mastermind. It just notes the recurring pattern without, assigning definitive blame itself.
Right. Okay, so taking all these examples together, the big airbase attack, the naval losses like Moskva and Ivanovets, the Kerch Bridge damage, and this pattern of assassinations the source discusses, what's the key takeaway, the main insight from this source material?
I think what the source really showcases powerfully is Ukraine's demonstrated capability.
Mm-hmm.
Their ability to execute creative, really complex, and genuinely impactful strikes deep inside Russian territory.
And using different methods each time, almost.
Exactly. They're not just using one playbook. They're leveraging varied approaches, long-range drones, these innovative sea drones, and what certainly look like covert operations hitting high-profile targets.
It really hammers home that David versus Goliath theme again, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It shows how a smaller nation is actively challenging a larger, conventionally stronger one. Not necessarily head-to-head, but through innovation, through ingenuity.
And leveraging asymmetric tactics, just like these examples in the source show.
And understanding these specific instances, these stories, is pretty crucial for you, the listener, to grasp the unique dynamics of this conflict, how it's evolving.
Yeah.
They offer really tangible examples of how modern warfare can be shaped by technology, clever planning, and frankly, the element of surprise, striking where the adversary least expects it.
Offsetting disadvantages in size or conventional power.
Right.
It really makes you think about the fundamental challenge this presents for Russia, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And, here's maybe a thought to mull over, something directly prompted by the pattern this source describes.
Okay.
Think about the immense challenge these kinds of unpredictable, diverse, deep strikes pose for Russia's internal security apparatus. Just keeping track, let alone stopping them. And then think broader. How might future conflicts, looking at these examples, increasingly rely on these sorts of inventive, asymmetric methods? Could they become just as significant, maybe even more significant, than traditional battles between big conventional forces?
Creating pressure, disruption. Yeah, that's definitely something to chew on.